Hey guys, so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm just going to talk about all the attributes that a square root function has. Okay, so that means we're going to cover stuff like domain and range, we're going to cover stuff like X and Y intercepts, we're going to cover finding max and min over specific intervals, okay? So basically we talked a lot about this stuff in class, but I'm still going to do like one of each, okay? So let's just look at number 9 here, okay? And let's just find the domain and range for number 9. So first, let me remind you of something. Let me remind you of what the square root function looks like, okay? So the calculator can draw it better than I can, so I'm just going to use the calculator. Second, square root, x, close that parentheses, hit graph, and bam. Okay, so this is the square root function, okay? This is the parent square root function. It means no transformations have happened, all right? So let's take a moment, let's glance here at number 9. We have a plus 3 happening underneath the square root, and we have a minus 7 happening outside the square root. What does this plus 3 underneath the square root sign do to the graph? Well, you should remember that it's going to make the graph move to the left 3. So now all of a sudden, instead of starting at the origin, like this guy did, I've actually now moved to the left 3. And then this minus 7 out here, well, it makes the graph move down 7. So now all of a sudden, I'm all the way down here at negative 7. So I've moved left 3, down 7. So I'm starting point for my square root function is right there. And then there's no transformation, there's no reflections. So I just go up and over. So the question is, well, what is the domain? Well, the domain is x is greater than or equal to, well, what was happening here? Well, my most left x value is negative 3, and then I went to the right after that. So x is greater than or equal to negative 3. Well, what's my range? Same concept. The range is that y is greater than or equal to negative 7, because that's what happened. I went down 7, and then I went up after that. So there's your domain and range. Okay? All right, let's talk about finding an X and Y intercept. Remember that an X intercept is when I cross the x-axis. What is y all along the x-axis? Y is equal to 0. Y equals 0. All right, and a y-intercept is where I cross the y-axis. What is x equal to all along the y-intercept? X equals 0. Okay, so these two pieces of information is going to allow me to find my x and y intercept. All right, let's try tackling problem 12. Let's find the x and y intercepts from problem 12. So first, let's talk about finding the x-intercept. All right, to find the x-intercept, well, what do I know about the x-intercept? That's where I cross the x-axis, and I know that y is equal to 0. And I know that f of x is really just a fancy y, so I can say 0 is equal to the square root of 2 minus x. Now I just got to solve for x. So I'm going to do that by squaring both sides. So squared, squared. All right. So then 0 squared is just 0. Is equal to the square root and the squared cancel each other out. So you get 2 minus x. So now you just need to finish solving for x. So to me, I see this as a negative x. What if I just added x to both sides real fast? Because 0 plus x is just x is equal to, these two x's cancel out, so you get x equals 2. So then when y was 0, x was 2. So that means the x-intercept is the point 2, 0. All right, now let's talk about finding the y-intercept from this problem. What do we know about the y-intercept? Well, we know that all along the y-axis, that's what the y-intercept is, where across the y-axis, x equals 0. Okay, because look, if I move left to right at all when I'm on the y-axis. No, I have not. All right, so I'll just let x be 0. So I will say that f of x is just a fancy y, okay? So we're just going to say y is equal to the square root of 2 minus 0. And y is equal to, what is 2 minus 0? Well, that's just 2, so y equals square root of 2. Now, can you take the square root of 2 and get a whole number? No. So we're just going to leave it as the square root of 2. So then that gives us the y-intercept. X was 0. Y was the square root of 2. And there we go. All right, so there's our x-intercept. There's our y-intercept. Simple as that. Okay, let's find a max and min over a specific interval. Okay, so let's look at problem 28. Before we start problem 28, I want to remind you what the square root function looked like. Okay, this is what it looks like. Assuming there's no reflections, or no, this is just the parent function. Okay, no transformations happen. This is parent function. What's happening to the graph? Well, it gets bigger the more I go to the right. It gets larger. It goes up and up the more to the right I go. So these are all my possible x values happening over here on problem 28. The only x values I care about are the x values between -7 and 0. Now, it's a different graph. It's square root of x plus 7. So as far as on a graph, you should realize, oh, that plus 7 right here, that just means I moved it to the left 7. So now I start at -7. And I go up and over like this. Okay? So now when you're looking at that, you should think, well, I need to find the max y value and the minimum y value. Anytime it asks for a maximum minimum, it's talking about y values. Okay? So you want to find the max y value and the min y value. So this plus 7 means I went to the left 7 times. Okay? So I moved myself over 7. Now when you're looking here, well, what do y'all think what x value do you think is going to produce the largest y value? Only out of these x values. I know my graph goes past 0, but really I stop at an x value of 0. So an x value of 0 is happening right here, so I stop here and here. So when you're looking at this section right here, what x value is going to produce the minimum, let's start with minimum, the lowest y value, the minimum y value? Hopefully you see that -7 is clearly producing the lowest y value. So I could say the square root of -7 plus 7 becomes the square root of 0, and the square root of 0 is just 0. So bam, the lowest y value happening is 0. Now, out of all of these, what do you think the highest, which one of these x values is going to produce the highest y value? An x value of 0. So I can go plug in 0, so I would get the square root of 0 plus 7, and I would get the square root of 7. Now, I can't break down the square root of 7, so I'm just going to leave it as the square root of 7. And there you go. All right? There you go. This is your minimum value. This is your maximum value. That's honestly all there is to it. All right, guys, I encourage you, go back, watch this video again. It's very short. It's less than 8 minutes. I want to make sure you understand all these. Again, these were the attributes of the square root function. We covered X and Y intercepts, we covered domain and range, and we covered finding max and min, and there was a little transformations discussion in there. All right, thank you guys for watching.